call the meeting of the Planning Commission of the City of Lathrup Village for Tuesday, October 18th, 2022 to order. Let's have everyone rise for Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Excellent timing. Okay, Madam Clerk, we got a roll call.
Roll call, Commissioner, Chairperson Hammond,
Present.
Vice Chair Stanberry,
Present.
Secretary Fobbs,
Present.
Commissioner Disick,
Present.
Commissioner Cantor,
Here.
Commissioner Tamarelli.
Present.
Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Excellent, thank you. We'll now accept a motion to approve the meeting agenda.
Motion to approve the agenda. Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Agenda is approved. We'll move on to the approval of the meeting minutes from the Planning Commission meeting for September 20th, 2022. I only noted one omission, which is under number 5, item A. This is approval of the meeting minutes. It says Commissioner blank moved to approve. Does anybody remember who made the motion? I assume it was Bruce, but I can't remember off the top of my head.
Could have been me. Yeah, probably Bruce.
Maybe we can,
Commissioner Cantor.
it was, okay, yeah,
Commissioner Cantor, second by Stanberry. I apologize.
no problem. Everything else looked good to me. Does anybody have any additions or edits for the? Okay. So accept a motion to approve the meeting minutes from the September 20th meeting with the single edit.
Make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from September the 20th with the edit. Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. The meeting's minutes from September 20th are approved. We'll now move on to public comment. If there's anyone who in the public who would like to make a comment to address the Planning Commission at this time, now is your opportunity. Speakers are asked to limit their comments to 3 minutes. And if there's anybody on Zoom who would like to make a comment, please raise your hand in the Zoom app so we can see that you want to speak.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, looks like we are good. So we will close the public comment and move on to item 6, which.
Do we need to make a motion to excuse Alicia Brown?
Oh, yes, sorry, thank you.
Yes.
Yes, so we are missing one of our planning commissioners. If somebody would like to make a motion to excuse them.
Make a motion to excuse Alicia Brown. Second. Did she call in or?
She sent an email, she's traveling, yeah. So moved and seconded, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, Commissioner Brown is formally excused. Thanks for that, Bruce. Good catch.
There we go.
We'll move on to item 6, which is public hearing. So the first item, 6A, is public hearing for the new ordinance language around permanent power generators. And Susie or Eric, you want to introduce?
So as we discussed with the last meeting, first of all, my name is Eric Peach with Giffords Webster, the city's planning consultant. And so the last meeting in September, we had discussed the changes, proposed changes for power generators within the ordinance. And so the memo that you received should be the final version. And there's a few notes that I had made to myself after reading through them again today. First of all, you'll note that within section 5.16.2G, the term permanent power generator was added in the list of items for this section. Just another clarification under 5.16.2H. I believe the intention was to include permanent power generators where it says power generators may be used for standby conveyance. So the planning commission may wish to include that if that was the intent. That was an oversight on my part. And then under section 1, Roman numeral 2, this is the part where we propose the noise for rear yard generators when it's when the ambient noise is greater than 65 dBA at the property line, the noise generated from the generator in combination with the ambient noise shall not exceed more than 10 dBA above the ambient noise. And I just wanted to make sure that I understood what the planning commission's intention for that was. Because if you notice on Roman numeral 1 above that, the maximum limited dBA is 70 overall. So I just want to make sure that we have the correct intention under the ordinance when making this change. And that there's no question about what the intent was to have the measurement of noise be 5 dBA over the 70 dBA max when taking into consideration Roman numeral 2. So other than that, I don't have any other comments.
Okay,
If I remember the discussion from last time, I think we did mean to have permanent power generators.
Permanent, I agree.
Mhm.
Yeah, or
I
I
think so too.
think it was an oversight.
Yeah, the like portable power generators or
Right.
generators on wheels, I don't think would fall under what we're trying to address with this ordinance. So, yes, for item 5.16.2.h, item 1 should say permanent power generators.
Item 2 as well.
Item 5, section 5.16.2.h, item 2 should also say permanent power generators.
So just anywhere.
Yeah,
within the
anywhere, 'cause-
document
Yep.
Should say
So
permanent
it's,
power
yeah,
generator.
5.16.2.h,
1.4. Yeah.
And we simply say permanent power generators, parentheses, also, however, the legalese of power generators. Do we need to put permanent on every single one of these?
I think it would be helpful, like
Okay.
as the one that generally gets the questions for
That's fine.
asking to split hairs, I think it's a
Okay.
good idea.
Yeah, I mean, permanent power generators are the ones that generally are gonna require things like testing.
No, I know, I'm just thinking in a legal document often it'll indicate,
Put it in the definition and then, yeah.
that's fine.
Okay.
Put permanent.
I have a question. Are temporary power generators get the same noise limit as permanent
There
power
are
generators?
no zoning ordinance languages at this point that address temporary or portable power
Yes.
generators.
Yeah, and that would fall under the noise ordinance, which we recommended council to update the noise ordinance.
Mhm.
But we haven't heard back from them on that yet.
And I think the difference in the DB was if you're in a loud environment, there would be an allowance for it, works out for an additional 5 dB above the 65 to 75, so that I don't know how noise works, but if the combination of your generator and the ambient noise takes you above that 70 limit, you then kind of have an extra 5 to work with.
It says 10.
So if you're next to the highway, I would presume, or the measurements taken in the middle of Southfield Road, or
Okay, that makes sense.
that's what I remember
Yep.
from the discussion.
That seems reasonable to me.
Yep,
too.
that's
Yeah,
what.
And I think that's what our
That's what it
intent
was about.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we need to.
Open the public
we need to
hearing.
So,
open the public
Yeah, so we'll now formally open the public hearing for the zoning ordinance changes for permanent power generators. So if there's anyone that would like to make a comment to the planning commission about the proposed ordinance language, now would be the time to do that. No? Okay. We will go ahead and close the public hearing for the zoning ordinance language around permanent power generators. Is there any other discussion from the planning commission on this topic? No. Okay. Okay, so we'll move on to the next public hearing, which is public hearing on zoning ordinance language for impervious surface coverage.
Yep, so for the memo on the impervious surfaces amendments, I don't have any real additional comments. just that I do recall that the planning commission had mentioned that 20 feet for a driveway width was excessive or generous. And that was just kind of a maximum. So as long as the driveway width stayed within the 20-foot maximum, that's why 20 feet is still within the letter, unless the planning commission wishes to change that. And then Susie will speak a little bit to the discussion that we had in regards to considering the lot coverage being 30% maximum. That the last discussion that we had, we did not take into consideration ADUs, accessory dwelling units, and that might be something that the planning commission may wish to consider when taking into account the percent maximum for the lots within the city.
It is, as we heard at the planning conference last week, I mean, housing's a big deal. Housing's a big thing for us as planners, for us to be thinking about. And so there was some really good sessions actually, that I attended. And one of them, don't worry, I'll be bringing ideas to you and you're gonna, but, one of them discussed exactly this, maybe not necessarily impervious coverage, but the need for flexibility in allowing accessory dwelling units or other sort of, granny flats housing. And thinking about, I mean, these were larger cities, and so there was more of a focus on densification. So, but I think that given that our population is we've got an aging population of the village, I think this may be something we want to perhaps allow an exception for. I mean, we can leave it as is for now or take up later.
Yeah, I was gonna say I would leave it for now because we'll probably address ADUs comprehensively, is my assumption.
Okay.
Where we would actually amend this language. So I
Okay.
think that, I think that's a much deeper conversation going into ADUs and obviously the state housing plan.
Right.
What's already in there, so I would probably, my recommendation would be to take away for now, knowing that we have to revisit ADUs comprehensively.
Okay.
And I think in the short term, if somebody has a need to build an accessory dwelling unit on their property that would put them out of compliance with this zoning ordinance, then they can apply for a variance if they can show need, right? If there's a specific need in their family to build a suite for somebody that they want to house or something like that. then-
Yeah, Jason, what that would do is give us a temporary measure, some runway to actually discuss it.
Okay. Excellent. Well, then consider that a bug in your ear for future conversations, right?
Okay.
So,
Yeah, the only thing I wanted to bring up, just as a kind of a reminder from our last meeting, we're trying to make this simple, right, to enforce.
right.
Which is why we just kind of chose the percentages that we did for lot coverage and impervious surfaces, so that we don't have to do a whole bunch of calculations anytime somebody's trying to apply for a site plan review to address either building a new building or adding a driveway or something like that. That would be an impervious surface. So the intention is to make it simple for everybody involved, the applicant, the city, code enforcement, and everyone. Great. All right. So at this point, we will, unless there are other comments, the planning commissioners, okay, well, yeah,
As it related to this, did the council do anything about the retention?
bioretention areas.
No, it was actually on my list of things to bring up last night's council meeting along with about 10 other things. But I had car trouble, so I was not able to make it. So,
Okay.
but it's on my list, so I'll make sure it gets followed up on.
Okay.
Okay, so at this point, we will open a public hearing for the zoning ordinance language, proposed zoning ordinance language for impervious surface coverage. Again, if anyone in the public would like to make comment about this language, or anybody on Zoom, please raise your hand. We'll be happy to hear from you. Okay, looks like we're good on that. So we'll close the public hearing on impervious surface coverage. We'll move on to item 6C, which is the public hearing on special land use application for Ambassadors Institute at 26647 Southfield Road.
Yes, so we are going to be discussing this a little bit more in just a few moments. But this is a new business that is looking to operate in the city at 26647 Southfield Road. And they're hoping to do, they're an educational institute. And so in mixed use zoning, that is considered a special land use, which is why we're having a public hearing for them this evening. So we do have representatives from both ambassadors and their architect that will be able to present their project in more detail and answer some more questions when we get to that portion.
Okay. Sounds good. It looks like a reasonable use from the application. I did a little snooping online. Looks like they have a class scheduled to occur next Monday. So
We're optimistic.
yeah. So assuming we can get everything approved, I guess that needs to, I mean, the special land use needs to go before the city council, does it not?
Mhm.
The city council is probably not meeting again before next Monday. Okay, so something to bear in mind there. But did anybody have any thoughts or comments from the planning commissioners about the application?
But we're gonna be discussing it later, right?
We will get back to it later, yeah. Okay, so we'll open up the public hearing for the special land use application for Ambassadors Institute at 26647 Southfield Road. So if anybody in the audience or on Zoom would like to make any comments about this special land use application, planning commissioners would love to hear from you at this time. Okay, looks like we're good. So we'll close the public hearing for special land use application for 26647 Southfield Road. We'll move on to item 7, old business and tabled items. 7A, proposed zoning text amendment for permanent power generators. So we just discussed, does anybody have anything to add to this? So if not, then I think that this time we would entertain a motion to recommend to the city council to approve the proposed zoning ordinance language for permanent power generators there was a couple of edits that we needed to add around adding the word permanent to where power generators are referenced. So we'll entertain a motion at this time.
Yep, I'll make a motion to recommend the approval of the permanent power generator amendments listed in today's packet with the addition of the word permanent in 5.16.2.h in those places where this refers to power generators. And that this is recommended this be approved and forwarded to city council for approval.
Second.
So moved and seconded. Any other discussion on this topic? Okay, without any, we'll all in favor of approving the motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we'll move on to item 7B, which is the proposed zoning ordinance text amendment for impervious surface coverage, which we just discussed. Does anybody want to add anything before we entertain a motion? No. Okay, so we'll entertain. Go ahead.
Question, in the second sentence, impervious surfaces definition.
Mhm.
Did we want to say include, was it, we were trying to make a more of a I don't want to say softer, but a softer wording like such as, so impervious surfaces such as drives, parking areas. Wasn't it the intent was this wasn't going to be the list, but a list of things that would be thought of as possible.
I remember that too. When I was reading this, I was thinking about that, and I feel like the end of the sentence which says, and any other surface which does not readily absorb water, kind of captures that, but in a more practical way, as opposed to an exemplar
That's
way.
fine.
So I was okay with it, but certainly if other commissioners are concerned about it? We should.
No, that's
talk-
fine then.
Anything else? Okay, so we'll entertain a motion. We would like to make a motion on this amendment.
Oh, I guess I'll make a motion to approve the impervious surface language in today's packet and move it on to city council for approval.
Second.
So moved and seconded. Any other discussion on this topic? Okay, hearing none. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to item 8, new business, item 8A, which is the proposed site plan and special land use review for Ambassadors Institute at 26647 Southfield Road.
So I'll just give an overview of the review letter that we should all have a copy of. As we stated, this is an existing building that consists of 1 floor and 5 tenant lease spaces for a total of 7,326 square feet. The northernmost tenant space is proposed to be converted to a use that will accommodate academic instruction, which is a special land use classification within this mixed use district. According to the information provided by the applicant, the parking lot along Southfield Road is accessible by drives at Ramsgate and Meadowwood. No direct vehicular access is taken from Southfield Road. An existing alley abuts the west side of the subject site, which also connects Ramsgate Drive and Meadowwood Court. The existing surface parking lot contains 40 off-street parking spaces, which includes 2 handicap spaces. No additional parking spaces are located on or adjacent to the alley. Parcels fronting Southfield Road south of the site are zoned mixed use, while parcels fronting Southfield Road north of the site are zoned commercial vehicular. Parcels west of the site are zoned R1 single family residential, and the subject site's previous use was an insurance office. No additional square footage is proposed within the scope of work for this development. In regards to the proposal, the applicant intends to renovate the interior of the existing tenant space for a new use. The proposed floor plan consists primarily of office space. However, the intended use is for small-scale academic and educational instruction. While office is a principal permitted use in the MX district, mixed-use district, conducting educational instruction in the office space requires special land use approval by the Planning Commission. The hours of operation will be from 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m., Monday through Thursday, with occasional Fridays of the same hours. And the facility will operate occasionally on Saturdays from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., but will not have Sunday hours. No additional square footage is proposed to be added to the existing 900 square feet of tenant space. So with this review, we note the following. First, an off-street parking analysis was not found within the set of plans. So we asked the applicant to provide an overall parking analysis that includes all tenant spaces. Given the existing occupancies, it appears that the site is adequately parked. Number 2, the site plan of the existing overall facility does not indicate an area with a dumpster enclosure. Therefore, the applicant shall indicate how solid waste will be stored at the tenant space and removed from the site. A site visit to the property observed exposed waste cans located in the alley behind the building. Number 3, the site plan identifies existing parking lot light poles and fixtures. However, no additional lighting information is included in the plans, particularly pertaining to wall-mounted light fixtures or those facing adjacent single-family residential properties. We asked the applicant to provide information pertaining to lighting the property. If lighting is proposed, it shall comply with the standards of the ordinance. Number 4, no additional landscaping is required for the change of use of an existing tenant space unless additional parking spaces are required or proposed. And lastly, since structures are existing, all development standards of the mixed-use district are met. In response to the special land use approval, we note the following. While not a permitted use, educational instruction is a reasonable use within the mixed-use district, as it fits the category of recreation, education, and assembly. The proposed use is reasonable within the context of location, intensity, and periods of operation of the city of Lathrup Village. Verification that the site will remain in compliance with off-street parking standards will ensure, number one, conformity with all regulations of the city. Number two, consistency with the spirit and purpose of the ordinance and to the principles of sound community planning. And three, ensure no adverse effects on neighbors. And with that, Mr. Chair, that concludes my presentation.
Thanks, Eric. So, yeah, I think obviously there's existing use going on there with other businesses that are in the same property. It doesn't look like there's an excessive number of additional people coming to the building because of this new business, so the parking should be good, but do we have any concerns about parking at the
Well, and
site? I mean, there's
Mr.
40
Chair,
spaces.
We do have, like I said, their architect and the business owners are here. Happy, I'm sure, to answer any
Sure.
questions that the planning commission may have.
Before we bring them up, I'm wondering if anybody else has any concerns. I don't necessarily have a concern about it, other than wasn't in the site plan that was submitted.
I figured they would address it when they do their presentation.
Yeah, okay. All right. All right, so yeah, we would love for property owner, the architect to if you would come to the podium up here.
All right, then come on over, Mr. McCary. I'm gonna have you sit right here next to me as the public comment computer. So the Zooming public can hear you.
Well, thank you for inviting us here. My name is Charles McCreary. I'm with McCreary Group Architects, and we are one that put together the package for the tenant. To address the parking issues, we have 5 tenants in the building. And there's a total of 40 parking spaces that have been allocated, with 2 being handicapped. So of the allocated parking spaces at facility 26603, they will have 10 parking spaces. At 26621, they will have 6 parking spaces. At 26631, they will have 11 parking spaces. And at 26641, 6 parking spaces. And at the Ambassadors Institute at 26647, they will have 6 parking spaces. So the total of that number is 39 that are being required, and we have an allocation of 40 being provided. I did put together a response to the letter that the city so eloquently provided with Giffords Webster. Thank you for those comments. So what I'd like to be able to say is the 2 main issues that came up that we'd like to address. One is parking, and the other is the light fixture that's at the rear. So what you have indicated is you want to have a light fixture that does not shine onto the residential areas at the back of the building. So we're proposing a fixture that will provide a downlight. And it will be located directly over the door. And I did not allocate that in the initial planning session. But it will be right there.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, what you take there, because this was marked up.
Oh. That's the fixture. At the alley side of the building.
That's the one to replace this one here.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
So is it gonna be located in the same spot where the existing light fixture is
correct.
above the door? Yeah.
Simple swap out.
So there you go. Pretty. Yeah.
The other issue that was addressed was trash. How is that going to be handled? Typically, we're going to anticipate that it's going to be handled pretty much the same way it is right now with the Tringelli sanitation. They have a contractual obligation with them, and they will have that trash moved on a routine basis. I don't know how frequent that is.
Every Monday.
Every Monday? Okay. We did some exhaustive studies. We were thinking about adding a 10 by 10 enclosure. But obviously it would be unsightly if it's on the Southfield Road side. There's not enough green belt for it to be handled off the parking lot, so I don't think you'd want to do that. And right now, I don't think it'd be an impediment to what is currently being handled.
Yeah, so it sounds like what we have is kind of existing non-compliance with this ordinance. Based on what's in the ordinance about buildings in this zoning district. Having enclosures with all the requirements for fire door and so on and so forth. I think,
There are, this one has, they use trash receptacles. The property just south of City Hall does, there's several of our spaces like this that have regular trash pickup by Tringali.
because the narrow alleys are narrow, there isn't really a space for a rubbish enclosure or anything like that. Yeah. I guess my personal opinion is it's fine, right? As long as the cans are maintained, just like any residential business or any other businesses that have trash picked up this way are managed so that they're not blocking the alleyway and that they're kind of stored closer to the building and that their lids remain closed and things like that. But that's just my opinion. What do the other planning commissioners think?
So legally, does it require, because it's a new site plan, does it require a variance from the ordinance?
I don't. No, I don't.
Should we ask Scott?
I mean,
Baker?
he's eyes, I see him.
He's there. I
I'm
don't think
looking,
so.
I'm looking at it right now. I would have to, and unfortunately, this came in, I didn't have an opportunity to review this. I was gone while this came in, so I just got a chance to take a look at this. So I'd have to go and look closely at what percentage of the building is changing. Initially, my gut reaction is that they would be required to come into compliance with the current zoning standards because they are making a modification significant enough to require a site plan review. I'm sorry, a site plan and special land use review. But I'm gonna have to get back to you guys on that one because I do agree there may be a need to visit the ZBA for some relief on this because of the practical difficulties of the site in locating an enclosure. So I'll get back with Susie on that tomorrow for sure.
But what about, like we've had other site plans over the last few years where I feel like they're essentially this use is essentially, they're reusing space. It's a change of use, yes, but reoccupying an otherwise vacant space. I'm thinking of our friend over where George's Soccer used to be. And granted, those were not special land uses, so perhaps that's really the difference. But we did not require them to install a dumpster enclosure. And we did accept that they would be doing trash pickup, commercial trash pickup.
We're setting precedent here because this is a special land use review. That's why we have a site review. If we actually start doing variances, this is actually different than just special land use, in my opinion. Just looking at the zoning, we're opening another door because the building technically is not changing. It's actually the interior.
Yep.
And so if we want to set that precedent, then let's actually call it out. But a special land use is a special land use. Now, if it was special land use and there's a larger modification, and that's different. But I don't see this as actually modifying the core structure of the building. So
I think there's a trigger, right?
That's what I'm wondering.
There's a trigger, and if the trigger is full, essentially is met, then that it would require everything to be brought up to code. So that was my
That's
question.
what I'm wondering is, are we actually, because there's a special land use, are we triggering other things that have to be considered? Or are we actually assessing this as just special land use to see if it complies and we can actually give it?
So my feeling is that whenever we have a site plan review come in front of us, that's the opportunity, especially because the city's built out, right? Any site plan review that comes before us, whether it's a special land use or not, is our opportunity to make sure that these older buildings are being brought into compliance with the current standards. Right, because the zoning ordinance have changed in a lot of cases.
Right.
compared to what they were when those buildings were initially developed. So I think it's our job as a planning commission to make sure that we at least consider those things.
So I just want to make sure that if we're gonna do it, let's put it on the record, because we're setting precedent, so at least we
Yep.
have that.
The other thing that I was thinking about is there are 4 other addresses at this building that
Exactly.
do, as far as I know, do not have special land use
Mhm.
requirements, right? Because their businesses fall within the existing ordinance.
But they would be legally non-conforming.
And not if they're not special, well, they might be legally
Right.
non-conforming if there is a requirement for them to have these enclosures or other, language around, rubbish enclosures and rubbish management, as part of their business or applied to their address. But they're not before us. Site plan
right,
review
right.
because they already are
But-
operating,
But
right?
is that true? Because the question now is, you're asking to possibly for a dumpster enclosure because of the special land use, because it's a change to the building. Once you change one part of the building, to me, you've changed the whole building. So if you've got a dumpster for one, now I need four dumpsters. All of a sudden, someone's gonna say, well, how is it that I have a dumpster, but they have a garbage can?
Mm.
So if the building is changing, and this is a special land use for the building, because it's a site plan for the building, that means everybody gets a dumpster.
Yeah, I guess
That
that
means
means
we
Scott
got-
question.
5 dumpsters now, 5 dumpster enclosures now, or you have one major dumpster enclosure.
Well, that's to your point. If everyone actually complied with the current zoning, it would never change. It would
Right.
always- Unless there was another special land use that triggered it, or someone wanted to actually really change the building.
So the question is back to the first thing.
Mm.
Is this really just about the fact that you're going from an office to educational? Or is it more about the fact that you're changing the building? They could have changed the downlight on the building just because the old light went out.
Sure.
But we're talking about, we're using the downlight of the building as a change to the building, which is triggering all these other things.
I think actually it's the special land use application that's
right.
required for the purpose of the business,
on the site
not
plan.
that's triggering the need for a site plan.
Okay, but but the site plan ties to the building.
Yes.
So that means anything that changes has to tie to the whole building. You can't change just a piece of the building.
Scott, can you advise on that?
So I think where Jason's point is heading down the right road. The issue that I have with it, and I'm trying to listen while read at the same time. So, but the issue that I have with it is that, yes, the requirement to obtain the special land use approval requires that they also submit and obtain a site plan review. It's that site plan review is what I'm concerned that triggers and requires, not so much the changing of the light, because to Les's point, yeah, they could have changed that and nobody would have known because the light bulb, the fixture went out. But because the site plan review, and that's what I'm trying to find quickly here, to see if they're required not only to conform to the current or all city ordinances and current zoning standards as part of that site plan review. So, and if I come across it here quickly, I'll jump back on and let you know. But I think at this point, I think if there's a motion to be had, that it'd be contingent on this issue being resolved administratively.
Yeah, that seems like a reasonable solution, right? Because we don't have an answer to that question. We're probably not going to get it tonight, but we don't want to hold up the review and approval or rejection of this special land use application. So, yeah, we could see a motion that's contingent upon review by the city attorney of the zoning ordinance language to make sure that the waste and rubbish is managed in accordance, or what would determine whether or not it requires a variance. Because that's really what it would come down to.
The variance, or how do we apply the rubbish to the building?
Yeah.
Or is it actually just for
That specific
the
address.
application in question?
Yeah.
So that is really,
That's,
how are we applying this? I hate to say equitably, because it sounds like I'm making an opinion. But basically, if we're talking about the building, then we should actually be applying that to the said building as opposed. Is what's in question, I guess.
Right, well, that's another question that we need city attorney to help us
So we can
answer.
put that in the language.
So is the only option then a dumpster? Because I read this, that they could have a storage room, a fire protected 1 hour. So it's
I-
either or in this case, or,
I had that question too, and I didn't dig into the language enough. It seems like this is more about the enclosure. You could put a garbage can inside of an enclosure. You put a garbage can inside of a room inside the
no,
building,
that's what
right?
I'm saying. I'm just saying that
Doesn't need to necessarily be a
concrete-
dumpster, even though you have a dumpster enclosure, right?
Yeah, I don't follow.
Finish your thought. I didn't mean to cut you off.
So are we saying the question is whether they have to provide a dumpster outside of the building on a concrete pad other than in the alley? Or in the alley is okay, or store rubbish in a fire protected room, 1 hour rated in the building per item 2 in the packet?
Well, I think both of those are suitable, but I think the issue is
Or
whether or not-
the other or to that would be or obtain a relief from the ZBA.
What would that, I don't follow.
And then they would have a can, just like
everybody else.
everybody else in the building, and like we have, you know, we put a can out in the street, there can wouldn't be.
Yeah, but I mean, that is also what's allowed in number 1. It says that, maybe it was here.
Well, again, that requirement for the ZBA relief would only be if review determines that the special, this whole process of special land use approval and site plan review triggers the requirement that they bring the property into compliance with all the current standards. So if it's not a requirement, then this last 10 minutes was an exercise in futility, or those are the options that Robert had just laid out. So
it's two things. So Robert, everything you said, plus who's the they? Is it, again, building or actual?
Right.
There's a question on that.
Exactly.
Yeah, does it affect all the addresses in this one building or just a single address in this one building? Okay,
But based on what he just said, we can determine if we want to focus on the change from office to educational without addressing and bringing the whole building up to.
Right, the motion can be contingent upon.
Yes.
correct.
Which will resolve the issue completely, and it would be basically consistent with every other tenant in that building. Except for, I mean, not the use of the space, but the exterior space
Exterior,
would stay
yeah.
the same. The building, as far as the public would see, would not change. The insurance company's dumpster would went away, the educational institute dumpster would show up. Garbage can, I'm sorry,
Garbage cans. But I thought, maybe I'm misinterpreting what we're saying. I thought what we're saying is that city attorney would investigate and back to us about these questions about whether or not this this special land use application and the subsequent site plan review requires the building to this specific address to either come into compliance with the zoning ordinances, or in this case around rubbish enclosures, or require a variance.
or well, the other thing Scott said was,
Fire rated. or fire
well,
rated.
despite the fire rated, but the other thing is that if we choose, as we would, then, like you said, the last 10 minutes were just the conversation. If we choose not to go that route, then we would have to just make a motion contingent on we're choosing not to go that route.
Well, the choice of whether or not to go down that route is whether or not there's a trigger.
I don't think we can
Well,
just
no, we
arbitrarily
can't
decide we're
make
not
that
gonna.
There's already a trigger.
Right, and
Okay.
whether it's just whether or not that trigger is met.
Okay, then I guess my question is gonna remain the same, since we're gonna make sure this is on record. This is about the building, right?
Correct.
So whatever comes back, it affects the building, not just the tenant. That's what, is that right?
I think that's
That's another question for the city attorney. Yeah.
But that's see, if I was the tenant,
Yeah,
whatever you come back with, if it's not across
Doesn't
the
apply to-
board, then it's gonna be another trigger. Because if I was the tenant, I would say, well, let me get this right. This is about the building. It's not just about me anymore. So why aren't there 4 dumpsters if you're gonna make me put in 1? If we know it's coming. So I mean, just plan ahead, you can see it coming. So if we can wait for Scott to come back and tell us that, yeah, there's an issue, you're gonna have to deal with this, you might need a dumpster, then the question is, no, we're gonna need 5. And then they're gonna come back and say, we don't have the space for 5, we don't have the use, but I'm just thinking ahead. It's gonna come back, so why wait?
Yeah,
6
I mean,
weeks to-
again, on that issue, I think, I mean, the logical answer is that it would apply for the building, right? We don't require multiple dumpsters. I mean, I'm thinking of some other properties on the other side of the street that, a little to the north, that we can barely get one dumpster there, let alone one for each suite in the building. So, I think it would, if it was a requirement, it would apply. It would apply for the whole building and, you know, all 5 tenants would utilize that one dumpster. It wouldn't necessarily be one per suite of the building.
So it becomes one for the entire building, shared by 5 tenants. Obviously, there's cost.
But
and
now we all know that.
maintenance. Yeah. Okay. Okay.
So in the meantime, what happens to the tenant, proposed tenant?
So the recommendation, whatever we recommend, is gonna have to go before the city council anyway for approval. We can't approve the
No, I got
special land use.
Got that.
So, well, I think what happens is there would be a motion that would have this contingency based on the research that the city attorney is gonna do. And it's that motion, whatever we move, along with the information that comes from the contingency associated with the city attorney's recommendation, that would go to the city council. I think that's,
Well,
Not quite, because the site plan, that is entirely under your purview, right? So whatever we learn about, you know, starting requiring a dumpster, not requiring a dumpster, that is within your control, right? The motion can be, we're gonna approve this, subject to the condition of X, Y, Z. Recommendation for council about the special
special land use
use
separate.
independent, so they will not have any action to take regarding the site plan at all.
Got it.
Right,
Okay.
so-
so Jason, if I'm understanding, we have a contingency, wouldn't we have to say whatever comes back from council? We're either gonna do X or we're gonna say Y, so it can actually, otherwise it's gonna have to come back to us. And we're gonna have to say X or Y because we don't have the information.
Right. Well, so just to be clear, to make this simple, it's separate, as Susie was just suggesting, the special land use recommendation from the site plan review. So nothing's gonna come back to us from city council.
No,
regarding the
I'm
special
saying from the site plan, because right now we have not actually said what we wanted to do if Scott says yes or Scott says no. And so we would have to actually, or not have to, but I'm assuming that we would want to say for that contingency, if it's yes, then we approve blah, 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 blah. If it's no, then it actually can stay the same way and blah, blah, blah with trash cans.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
That's my interpretation.
Okay. Just
Now,
want to make sure. that
if
we're
it comes back and the determination is that, yes, this building, all 5 units need to be in compliance with the zoning ordinance requiring a enclosure for rubbish,
Mhm.
and the applicant doesn't want to install an enclosure for rubbish because the alley is narrow and there are other buildings in the city, other businesses in a similar situation that are using garbage cans.
Mhm.
Do they apply for a variance?
We could.
I mean, and it could be, it could be as simple as saying, I mean, because dumpsters can be, I mean, that's an administrative site plan.
Mhm.
Approval. So, I mean, it can say, you know, pending on the research. You know, it's found that they need a dumpster, then they'll seek that dumpster approval administratively. If they're not, then leave it as and allow them to carry it on Tringali, and I
There you go.
make it simple.
That's my A and B. So at least we're clear.
I'm clear on that. That makes sense to me too.
And then there's a separate one that says to recommend to the council to approve the
Special
special
land
land
use.
use.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yes.
That's the easy one.
That one's
Yeah,
pretty
Two
easy.
distinct motions.
How about I make a motion to send it to council to approve the special land use?
I'll second that, man.
So moved and seconded. Any other discussion on this one? No. Okay, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. So special land use recommendation of approval of special land use is approved and will be sent to city council. As far as the site plan review, the only thing that was mentioned was the landscaping, but just because it's not included in the site plan, but because there's no major changes happening, I don't think we need to be concerned about that at all. So it's really just this question around the refuse enclosure that we need to be concerned about. So
I'll let Will do that one.
Oh, please, I was trying to throw it this way.
It's not you, Will.
He had the A and B down.
Oh, man.
you can do it. We'll help you.
Yeah, I will, oh, goodness. Let me pull up my notes. All right, so I make a motion that we will approve this current site plan contingent from legal counsel. And then I guess do we need to throw A and B in there? All
I
right.
would.
And so if council deems that, or it does need to be a trash receptacle that will fly through the whole building. If it does not, then we will let that be handled administratively by the city. Did I do everything? I was trying to throw everything in there.
Yeah, I think the other thing is if it is determined that the refuse enclosure is not required, then no contingencies are required, right? They just continue to manage the refuse the way they do
Okay,
today.
and the default, if no contingency is required, then we will actually just seek the zoning ordinance as stated.
So moved. Do we have a second?
Second.
Moved and
Thank you for
seconded.
cleaning that up for me. That was messy.
Perfect.
I think we're clear on it though. Is there any other discussion on the site plan review? Okay, hearing no other discussion. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Site plan is approved on contingency.
All right.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay.
I will work with Mr. Baker, letting you guys know what the answer is. I will get off on that.
Great. Perfect. Thank you.
So.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Give you an email,
Yes.
but if you're not hard to get.
Yeah, no. Oh,
You sure?
yeah, okay. Thank you.
Okay, next item on the agenda is item 9, other matters for discussion.
I had grand plans for us, actually. Of what we were gonna, I had other plans for what we were gonna talk about, but they've all slipped my mind, so. I'll leave them for next year, or next month.
Next
Next
year.
year.
Next
Thank
year.
you. Thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for coming in. Thank you.
No, I've got some ideas. I know we talked, I believe it was Bo had asked about, and a couple of you have asked about some of those training. The virtual training, so, did not pin down our map education person over last week, but beginning with her, we can get those 3 training sessions, and we will be doing our planning refresher probably in November.
Yeah, so there were some emails that went
Yes.
back and forth between Susie and Jill and me and Will. And I know Bo was part of some of those emails as well. So, but the rest of you maybe weren't, especially you, Mark. So there is a desire amongst the planning commission to have Giffords Webster and Susie present to the planning commission some planning training. In particular, we know the Michigan Association of Planners offers some training courses. Most of them require a fee, but there's some education that we can certainly get just from our planning consultants. So the idea here is to come up with a plan on what topics to cover and when to present them to the planning commission. So
And
we
maybe
can
what
all
I'll
get
do-
refreshed and up to date.
Maybe what I'll do is put together a little to go with those few, choose your own adventure kind of thing. We'll pick amongst the most popular ones for at least that, and then.
And my recommendation is inside of our binders, I was going through and dusting it off. And inside of our binders, we actually do have the guidebook.
Yes,
So that's actually a really good review for those that are new, or actually for myself that just wanted to refresh on all the different components. And that may actually allow us to be more topical So we're not just doing general overview, but actually being able to address some of the things that are really
Okay.
cool that maps have.
Sounds like a plan.
I forgot I was in there.
Susie, is the intention to do this outside of planning commission meetings?
I hadn't gotten that far in the process. I kind of,
I think it depends on how long the training sessions are gonna take, right? So,
right, either how long, and one of the questions I had for at least those virtual ones is, I mean, can I give you all the same, is it gonna be the same code and just watch it
on
your
demand,
own?
Yep.
I mean, if we've got a late agenda.
depends on the
we
topic.
just- we
Personally,
Just hit play and,
Some of them were 30 minutes. I think the max was an hour.
okay.
okay,
Okay.
So I think, yeah, for anything that Maps providing, but if anything that Giffords Webster is providing to us, we should do in person, right? Then we can have
Yes.
back and forth, so.
and I think we can, I think we can decide as a group, we wanna. During the meetings or as separate study session.
I'm sure everybody on this planning commission would prefer to do it during the meetings.
I would
would
say-
kind of
Well,
agree with that.
plus during the meeting, it provides for discussion. If you're doing it by yourself,
Right.
there's not gonna be much discussion. That's not-
No, but I think like the map trainings, which are on demand, it makes sense to do those just on your own. And maybe we bring in questions or email questions that we might have, and we can certainly discuss things that come up in those trainings during the planning commission meetings.
You don't wanna have more meetings?
I personally don't want to have one. I shouldn't, I don't want to speak for anybody else.
I like.
But I mean, if the topic is important enough and if the content is going to take enough time, then I think it, sure, it makes sense to do it outside of the planning commission meetings.
And since we're talking about training, I would recommend, maybe not the zoning component, but the citizens planner, is, especially if you're new, is really, really good, by MSU. And, there's a fee to that, but it's really, really good. Gives you how to review site plans, and they kind of really break that down. Really talks about the history of it, et cetera. It's,
You have a link or where?
I'll make sure on our thread. that-
And
Jill-
that's a training that Jill can
Right,
give
Jill
us
teaches
too.
that,
yeah.
That's a training that she teaches, right? It's,
Oh,
it's
I
a,
thought you said MSU. so.
Yeah,
I-
well, he did.
yeah,
he did.
That's where it's housed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
when I took that class up in Frankenmuth, Joe was the
yeah,
instructor.
that's one of Jill's regular classes on the
Yeah.
circuit, if you, on the planning circuit. So, I mean, there are definitely things that we can take advantage of in terms of, the trainings that she already is well versed in. So we can certainly do the site plan one. I do want to, at least for the upcoming budget year, we have no budget for planning commissioner training. I'd like to see what we can do about that, right? At least maybe that, Will was able to join, it was awesome. I think it's really beneficial. It'd be nice to see everybody get an opportunity here, if there's something that's interesting to you, so.
A couple thoughts.
Yeah.
So I'm retired. I can see it anytime. I know most of these gentlemen are not. But if it's free and it's available and it's of citizen interest, we may want to also invite the citizens to watch, right? An informed community is a good community to have. I don't know if there's extra cost. If there's extra cost, then maybe not. But if it's something we're going to do during a meeting, let's let citizens know. They have questions. They want to know things. I wouldn't guess that many people would attend, but why not offer it? Right?
And we might find some more
Great
planning
suggestions.
nerds to hang out with us.
Yeah.
Right?
Right, so if you some fill-ins for the next time around. And as part of a meeting, if we allocate, if they're half-hour meeting, half-hour segments, 45 minutes, 20 minutes. Maybe each meeting offer one so that it's not all at once. We can, let's not delay it. Let's get some going as quickly as possible so we all can come up to speed. Okay.
Good idea.
Some
Thank you,
thoughts.
Heather. I appreciate them.
Great points. I had two things. One is I was looking at the cover of the Southfield Sun from October 13th, and the lead story is Southfield Master Plan 2.0 taking a much more holistic approach. So I read through the article and there's no earth-shattering things in there. Pretty consistent with what we're trying to do. They are concerned about housing. They're concerned about green spaces. They're concerned about walkability and pedestrian traffic. And so it seems like based on what's in this article, Southfield's updating their master plan. I think the last time they did this was like in 2006 or something like that. And from my reading anyway, it's pretty consistent with what we were trying to do and what we've been talking about with reviewing our own zoning ordinances and making sure that, yeah.
Well, Jason, along that point, because the governor just released the, I think, first of its kind housing plan for the whole state. I can make sure I send that link to the group. It's actually worth a good read to understand what the state's looking at. There's funding already going to the land banks. They talk about all the different mechanisms. I mean, the economic developers and it's statewide. So kind of understanding where they're going with it. And they talk about numbers, how many new houses, how many infill, what they're looking for, green space. And so a lot of the planners at the up north, and I just came back from the land bank conference over the past 2 days. This is the hot topic. And so it's worth at least us thinking, if we're thinking about CIP, if we're thinking about master planning or just reviewing what some of the priorities, it may shift. Because obviously there's probably grant dollars associated with it. They realize it's going to cost money. And just understanding with the heart of what the state's doing, they've already made their council. And I'm assuming that's why we're getting a lot of press releases, because it's happening.
Yeah, it's happening. And like, just to go back to when we were discussion about impervious surface ordinances and the topic of accessory dwelling units and the idea that our community is aging, right? And so maybe there might be a demand for things like additional places for people to live that are smaller, aren't multi-story, things like that, like all that is connected.
Well, you'll see even things about form-based, along Southfield Road. What are we doing? We know that this is going to be a state street, well, it is a state street, but it's going to be updated.
At some point, someday.
Well, is that form-based? Is that Euclidean? I don't know. But those are things that the state's actually looking at. If that's your main corridor, how are we advocating for ourselves that's in alignment with what the state's looking for that may actually pay dividends for our city? So.
Yeah, and if we can get in front of it, then we can actually have some influence over decisions that the state or the county are going to make about our city.
Exactly.
Like in the roads and spaces that they control in our city. Anything else on that topic? The only other thing I had was during our last meeting, Les had asked for updates on the status of projects that are related to site plans that we've approved.
Yeah.
Just wanted to know where that stands.
Right, I got it started. And there's actually a fun, all right, no, it's not. There is a report. Now, right, there's a report that I can generate through our BSNA system. We did shortly after I came on board, we added there's different modules to the BSNA. We added the planning, zoning, and engineering module to help us track site plans and special land uses. And all of those land use application processes. So there is a report that I can run for that. I wasn't confident when I first ran the report, it was 100% accurate. Then I got distracted. So
okay, you're making
Exactly.
progress.
So it's
That's
in
really what we're looking for.
I know, I can't, I was long-winded meeting.
Well, you were gone last week too, so I mean,
Yeah.
look, yeah, thank you for making progress.
Still working on it.
I only reason I brought it up is I want to make sure that we're continuing to keep an eye on it, that's all.
Congratulations. I see we have a gas pump now.
There are gas.
You're
pumps,
welcome.
Yes.
You know what, I actually do have.
At the gas station, they can solve.
Okay, right. I think for our parking lot, I'm like,
No.
really?
Susie, while you're writing it down, I did have one comment. I was looking for the bylaws. And I could not find them online. Obviously, I have it in the binder.
The bylaws for the city?
No.
Procedure.
Yeah,
They're called rules
yes,
and
our rules
procedures
and
on-
procedures for our.
They're on the planning commission.
I did not see them.
It's on the left nav.
On the left
on the
now,
left side nav.
say no more.
It's the first item on the left side.
I didn't look on the left, that's why I was like.
Yeah, I know. There's things that need to be desired. Like,
Yeah.
They are there.
Yeah, I was once for like the th time looking for the zoning ordinances, and they should be in that list too on that page, and they're not.
I did a search for that.
Go to businesses on the main
Yes,
screen,
it's-
that's where I find everything.
Under business, it's also, if you go under government, under municipal code, it's listed there, but it's not on the planning commission page.
Really great. Go.
One thing at a time.
Yeah.
Right, I know.
Baby steps, baby steps.
Any other matters for discussion?
You were about to say something.
I was gonna wait until general. communication,
Oh,
but-
yeah, not there yet.
I'd let you guys chit chat.
Okay, we will move on to general communication.
All right, now it's my time to shine. All right, good news, the PUD development agreement got approved last night, so. Yeah, you all deserve.
The PUD for Panera.
Yes, for Panera. Thank you. Thank you.
What's your?
The bus stop. Well, maybe. So that is
I'm-
signed, sort of. Gonna be the last John Hancock to go on that. And then they will begin moving through the engineering building approval, and then somewhere in there, we've got demolition too, and I've offered to swing a sledgehammer. So, just thank you very much all for, your efforts moving us through our very first.
Our
thing
first
development. So,
That's good.
I will keep you updated on where they're at in terms of moving that project forward.
I know that
but-
their desire over the summer was to try and get demolition done by the end of July so that they could get the building frame before the winter and then start working on the inside over the winter. Obviously, that's not gonna happen. Do you think they'll push off demolition until the spring as a result, or are they just gonna go forward anyway?
My guess is they're gonna go forward anyways. I mean, there's. I mean, don't get me wrong, it takes a lot for demolition, but. Big construction equipment can swing a boom.
Sure.
in all kinds of weather, right? So, and I honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if they go demolition and keep moving into construction. There are ways to construct during the winter. They may not be the cheapest options, but where there's a will, there's a way.
That's what I was saying.
I had a feeling you were gonna say that.
Or there's a will.
There's a will.
There's a way.
Build to spend time. But, so they are gonna be moving forward, but I'll keep you posted on how, what their timeline is for progression on construction, demolition, all that good stuff. So thank you very much again for all your hard work. As you did notice, BP is at a bump. They are moving forward. I actually just talked to that developer yesterday morning. We've got some questions about his mind and time, but he's so close to the finish line. He's very much looking forward to being at the finish line and open. So when that happens, I will let you know.
Do you know what ended up happening with the wall that we had recommended using pavers? And because I remember, like, after we had that discussion with them, they had installed their gasoline retention tank, then they had to remove their gasoline retention tank. That was the whole thing that prevented them from being able to install a posted wall along the sidewalk. So what ended up happening with all that?
They ended up using papers. That we got. So I think that's what got mentioned. So.
Yeah, because remember, the tank was too far over.
Yeah.
Yes, but then they had to move it
they
anyway.
had to Move it.
And I wasn't sure if they had to move it someplace else where maybe it would have allowed them to. I just wasn't sure.
They have to move it back. I mean, it's.
It was a way. so-
Yeah, it's fully on their property now. The state was not on board with their solution, or with our solution. I mean, we had suggested we could just get file some legal paperwork, right? The state wasn't on board with that. So he said it was more cost effective for him to just say, okay, I'll move it. them to try and go through all the rigmarole.
The legal rigmarole fighting their decision about that. Yeah,
Exactly.
okay.
So that's where we're at.
So he moved the tank so to satisfy the state, but he's still gonna install a paver wall instead of a footed wall.
I'll have to go, I mean, I'm gonna end up going out there soon enough.
It'd certainly be cheaper and faster, right?
Right.
So,
I'll have to be going out there anyways very soon to do my inspection. So
okay, great.
been definitive on that. Discount Tire is also moving along quite nicely. They have been, I'm gonna actually really quick piece to work with them. They've been very easy to work with, very responsive. And their project manager out there is reaching out. He's making me happy. Everybody's happy. So they're coming along quite nicely. So
And I have some new business I forgot to mention before in our comment section.
yeah,
On Lathrup Village, when you pass over the highway, and I don't know if this is actually in our lane or if it's in the state or NDOT, but basically there's a bush where you cannot see the traffic coming up the ramp. And that bush, the sight lines are actually not,
is
they're
that
they're a little off.
You're talking about northbound
Yeah,
Lathrop
yeah, so I'm
Boulevard,
going north.
south of 696.
Right, so I'm coming from the south going north.
yeah.
And there's a big bush.
Yeah.
And you cannot see the traffic, especially during busy times, so you kind of just creep out.
Mhm.
And it's really a simple solution to say that one bush would actually give about 20 feet of space, so you can actually see the traffic and have that split second.
northbound Lathrop Boulevard.
Yes,
South of
696. Right.
yeah, to the right. It's a real minor change, but I was like,
The bush is on your left.
yeah. Yeah,
You said right.
well, so I'm coming from the south going north. I'm crossing Lathrop or the overpass, and to the right, there's a row of big bushes on the ramp. So if you think about everybody coming up the ramp,
So but that's the westbound ramp, yeah? Here, let's use our map.
I know.
We got a map right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, because now I'm confused.
All
All
right,
right.
so
I'll walk over there.
show and tell.
I got cords. Yeah.
Lathrop Boulevard.
Yeah, so I'm
696.
so if I'm coming up here,
This
there's
is Lathrop.
bush. Oh, sorry. If I'm coming up here, there's bushes lining, all big bushes that are lining.
Along
Oh, I thought you were
the
talking.
on-ramp,
Yeah,
eastbound
yeah,
696.
so all these cars are coming up and you can't see them.
Oh,
So you have
the
to creep,
entrance ramp.
yeah, you have
Eastbound
to actually
entrance
creep,
ramp,
you have to
alright.
actually creep up. Because the cars are coming off the highway and you can't see.
So the cars we're trying to see are westbound.
It's
exiting
actually, it's
696.
actually the person that's driving down Lathrop that's actually saying, oh, well, let me actually turn onto 11 Mile. Well, you
You
cannot,
can't see these.
you
Okay.
can't see. And because that traffic does
So-
not have to pause or
That's right,
yield.
there's a pause.
So it's
Oh, so-
the westbound lanes of the service drive,
Oh, I see.
just east of Lathrop Boulevard. But along on the inside, the overpass, not
Correct.
on the
North,
city side.
right,
north side.
correct. It seems minor, but I would, heaven forbid, there's an accident, I'd
Yeah.
say something.
I never go that way. I'm always going the opposite way. I'm always heading south on Lathrop Boulevard, crossing the opposite way, so it doesn't even dawn on me that.
Would that be if it's not us, who would it be?
Well, that's what I was wondering, because is that
It's
actually within
either the county or the
jurisdiction of
state or
county or MDOT?
Okay.
And I almost went, never mind, I'm on record.
Careful.
It would be a sign to say these bushes were removed. The city needs to put that same sign up there when you turn right off the road,
Yeah,
turning right onto the service drive, where there's only one lane to turn.
Right, right.
Everybody turns up.
We've discussed that a million
A
times.
million
but-
times.
Okay, westbound lane of the north side of 696 Service Drive.
Correct.
yes,
And it's like in the little green belt.
yes, yeah, the green belt, there's like 3 or 4
Eric keeps
bushes.
taking us down onto the highway and Google Roads here, so it's these ones.
So we're- obviously, that's not our sign. We can put up that says only one lane can turn.
Oh, would be nice.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
There's no
lane-
jurisdiction.
This lane can turn, not this lane can turn.
I'll have to figure out.
That's what we're saying, is
Block
MDOT, is it
I block them right
county?
in the car.
Oh, I do
It's
that.
not a
Wait,
county.
wait, wait. I block them right in.
Yeah.
DDA has, the DDA has a contract for the mainland sides
Mhm,
of Service Drive,
Mhm.
right? I don't,
the green space, I mean, it's weird.
right, I don't know, I'll figure it out and tell them to chop down the bushes.
Well, it's just one, I mean, you probably could have enough sightlines, I mean, you shut down however many they want, but. I know that the sight line just give them more time.
They probably got it.
Southfield, that's north of Woodbury.
She said when they come off the freeway, so it's gotta
Yeah,
be.
so this is.
Any other general communications? There are a bunch of fall events occurring, right?
Two, yes, two, back
No
on
bushes,
track.
right?
So, there is going to be a
It's just
block
out there.
party, which is on October 21st, we'll be out back here. That is an initiative of logos and Voice Menu Foundation, the city and DDA have partnered with them to help promote it. It's a citywide event. And it is from 6 to 10. I believe that is. So that's on 21st. And then let's see that the following Saturday is the 29th, and we're gonna be doing a trunk or treat. We are looking for anyone who may want to pass out candy here. Again, that'll be City Hall and not in the municipal park. So if you're interested in passing out candy to the kiddos, we're looking for those volunteers, and there's also going to be there's a costume contest for the littles, pumpkin carving contest, and then there's also a Halloween decorating contest. So we are going to put together a map and do some voting that way, with winners announced at the trunk or treat event. Then we are also doing on the 5th, we are doing, it's gonna be chilling, but we are gonna have our final movie night of the year, Hocus Pocus. We'll have our bonfires out there, we're gonna have our heaters, so there is, believe it or not, there is a way for us to try and keep some space. So that'll be out in the yard. Join us, bring a blanket for 15. And then last but most definitely not least, on November 19th, the DDA is hosting our artisan winter market. That will be downstairs in the community room, and we are actively seeking volunteers, or not volunteers and vendors for the event. This is I think our 4th year doing this, and it's getting better and better, I think. So we hope to see you there. I think that pretty much sums up all the events right now.
Awesome.
The block party was actually, I thought it was for my birthday. Didn't you guys do that? Oh, it's not connected?
It was supposed to be.
I'm bringing you a gift.
I thought that's what it was for.
Hi.
Remember, there's a will, there's a way.
Couple quick things. One PSA. I was gonna mention it last night and again, I wasn't there, but we're doing fire flow testing.
Oh, yeah.
Starting Friday
Friday.
for, I believe, for 10 days. So residents around the city will start seeing brown water in certain places. And if you experience that, you need to go to the lowest portion in your lowest faucet in your house, which is typically your basement, run the cold water until it clears, then go up to the next level, do the same thing. And lather, rinse, repeat for the top floor of your house if you have a second.
This is on the website.
Yeah, it is, right? It's the first thing on the news
Yeah,
section on the
yeah.
website.
Yeah.
And it says that the dates for the tentative schedule are October 17th, so it should have already started. And it's supposed to end on October 28th.
Friday is the update I got.
Yeah.
Weather.
Yeah, and just update for the commissioners, the last night, both recommendations from the infrastructure study group were adopted by council. One was for water service line identification. So that was a two-pronged approach. One is more information to residents to get them to do the self-test and to get creative about how to incite them to do the self-test. And then knowing that we're still going to have a plethora of people who haven't done the test that we're gonna have to get in their houses to start working on hiring a contractor.
You're talking about the lead line
Lead line,
replacement
yeah.
project. Yeah, okay.
Yep, to identify in the home, because that all has to be done by December 24th of December 31st of 2024. Well, that seems like a lot of time, given how many homes we're gonna have to get in and the administrative headache that's gonna be to get all of those done in time. We wanted to get them started now. And then the second one is actually a pretty exciting one, is improving our water billing technology. So basically centralized antennas in the city that will read the water meters without having to do the drive-by. So it will save the city probably somewhere in the, I can't remember the exact number we put in the recommendation, but I think it's around $17,000 a year. And we'll have improved the service, and it also would wrap this technology. The technology would be there, so in the future, you know, when the water meters are eventually replaced, they will be able to take advantage of that technology. So
Yeah, so it's gonna allow DPW to work on other stuff. They won't have to be spending their time going around driving around with the reader to capture all the information.
yeah, and then,
But there is a small segment of the city that isn't touched by the cell
well,
network.
I
and
mean,
so
it's a
it's very
longer-
small.
Well, it's a longer discussion
Okay.
because, and I'll be real brief, but in order to get the true benefit, where we have like 99, I think it was like 99.8% of all homes hitting the towers, you would have to have the more updated transmitters, which we probably wouldn't do unless we were to replace the meters, because
What's the
again,
point?
the cost, right, exactly. So our existing transmitters will hit the towers, but they're lower power. So it's the study that was done was 85 to 95% of our existing transmitters will hit the tower. So looking at the worst case scenario, if we're down at the 85% range, that's around 200 homes that would still need the drive-bys.
Yeah.
So
that's way better than the
right.
3,000.
Right, so that 17, or I can't remember what the exact number was,
Or
it was
1,000.
$17,000 or $19,000, whatever it was, that number will come down a little bit, because we'll still have to do a little bit of
200 homes that they'll actually have to drive by,
right.
but that's way fewer than they have to drive by
Right.
now.
And there's solutions to mitigate that too. If we wanted to, as a city, we could replace the transmitters on just those meters, or, I mean, there's some different things that we could do, you know, decide administratively how we wanted to handle that, but
Bruce,
there's
did
some
you guys-
options.
did you guys discuss maybe escorting a little bit of that to actually buy the new transmitter at some point, since it's gonna be a budgetary item, I'm assuming, at some point.
Right, but that it really makes sense, I mean, to do it when we would replace water meters. And one of the things, I mean, now that gets into a whole other discussion, but you know, we also delayed the decision on whether or not to decide on recommending water meter replacement until after the OHM study. So OHM is doing, is our water loss consultant, and they're doing, okay, I gotta say it right, clamp on.
Thank
Clamp
you.
on.
Thank you.
We're doing
Thank you so much. You have no idea.
that's a whole other thing. But they're doing a project where they're putting a clamp on meter next to the existing meter, which we think is the culprit of the water loss, and that it's under reading to verify the read. And so what we felt was, you know, that should be done in a probably at this point 4 to 6 weeks. We should have the results of that. So we felt it made sense to wait, because if it comes back and it says that, you know, the meter, the 12-inch meter is the water loss culprit, well, that can inform our decision. Well, you know, then, hey, let's kick it down the road 5-10 years until we start thinking about replacing the meter. But if it comes back and says this isn't it, then that may again put a little bit more weight on thinking about the meter. So again, there's a lot to discuss, and it's a much broader conversation than the 2 minutes here. As Bo can attest, because he's been, as you know, real helpful in this process. But that's what's going on. So.
Great. Thanks, Bruce. Okay. Any other general communications? Anything from the city attorney? Good. Anything from Giffords Webster?
Nothing for me tonight.
Okay, thanks, Scott. Okay, great. I'll accept a motion for adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
We are now adjourned. Thank you.